It's long overdue. We need to audit the Federal Reserve.
It's past time to audit the Federal Reserve.
We have a much more disruptive business cycle than we ever had before we had the Federal Reserve.
Politicians criticizing the Fed. I never used to hear that. Maybe because few understood the Fed or even economics. But whatever the reason, this new interest is a good thing. And I think it happened mostly because one presidential candidate talked about the Fed. For decades, he was the only politician talking about it. And he, of course, is the author of End the Fed, Ron Paul. So, Dr. Paul, those two Democrats and your son want to audit the Fed. You want to end it. How can you be so sure when so many smart people say we need the Fed for stability?
The mess that we're in now is a consequence of the Fed. The Fed has been getting away too long for their responsibility. First, they create the artificial bubbles, and they get a lot of credit for that. Then the crash comes, the correction comes, and then they claim, well, we'll print money faster and we'll get you out of it, and they get credit for, the bump upward. No secret cabal of bankers or government officials should have the authority to create money out of thin air, because they will, and they will destroy the money. It's been known for a long time, way back to ancient Chinese history. They tried this and it doesn't work. This is what the Constitution said. Nothing but silver and gold can be legal tender. That was the law that was written. Hayek has suggested maybe the best transition would be just to legalize competition, though the book is written 10...
Currency competition.
Right, currency competition where the market, maybe Bitcoin offers competition.
Which is legal as far as so far.
Well, but the government doesn't like it either. So we have to wait and see what they do about it. They'll probably crack down on it.
But when you say attach it to gold, I look at gold prices since 1970, and that's not been a stable currency.
If you want to look for stability of gold and purchasing power, look at it over maybe 500 years, and an ounce of gold has certainly maintained a fairly steady purchasing power.
So this group of men has created $4 trillion. And people seem fine with that.
I just think a lot of grown-up people think it's fine, and if you have a problem, you just print more. If you have a problem with debt, you just spend more. Matter of fact, Keynesian economics teaches this. Any type of slowdown, you're supposed to spend more money. And if people won't do it, the government has to do it. If they don't have the money, they try to borrow it, but there's no money to borrow. They just print it out of thin air.
Austrian economics says this will lead to rampant inflation. And yet, we haven't had it yet.
No, we haven't had rampant inflation, but we have a lot more inflation than they'll admit to. We certainly had bad inflation in the 70s. I think we have a lot of inflation now. The whole point of Austrian economics is when you destroy the currency by printing a lot of money, you ruin the middle class, you really punish the poor, and you help the wealthy. The money goes to the wealthy class. And right now, today, the money is in the top 1% or 10%. And it's not because of free markets. It's not because of capitalism. It's because of this distortion in the currency. The rich get richer, and look, the middle class is getting wiped out, and it's a consequence of the money system.
Now, you say we don't need a Fed, but most every country has a central bank now, and you say we have bubbles and inflation because of the Fed, but we had bubbles and inflation before we created the Fed.
We did, but if you look between the time we went back on the gold standard in the 1870s up until World War I, it was very, very stable and very, very good economic.
9 recessions from 1883 to 1913. 3 recessions in the 30 years up to now.
And when the Fed stayed out, these recessions were very minor. They got over. And the Depression lasted for 15 years. And just look at what's happening in Japan. They're not a booming economy. And look at what's happening to us now.
And without their central banks, they would be booming?
I believe they would be. I really do. It wouldn't be perfect. There'd always be problems because you always have government. But the marketplace handles these things. But there will be distortions, but they're corrected quickly. And the people who overextended themselves, they're the ones that punish.
Thank you, Ron Paul.